Buenos días. A pleasure to be here in this meeting, to be in Lima, to be in Peru, to be amongst old friends and new friends, to be in the midst of a city that from day one has met all of us with such warmth and welcoming gestures, food, and words. 70% of the glaciers, of the tropical glaciers of the world, are in Peru. 70. And 40% of those glaciers has already disappeared. That's a fact. It's documented, has been measured, and it has indicators. Panama has evacuated already 2 islands by the canal, mainly inhabited by indigenous peoples. That's a fact. It's documented, and it's got indicators. And then on the other side, China and the US make a joint declaration to demonstrate that they are going to be players, real players. And yesterday, as I was flying from my hometown, Quito, to Lima, I look into the news and I find a title in the Financial Times. The Church of England has challenged BP and Shell, 2 of the world's biggest oil companies, to take responsibility for their carbon footprint and limit their contribution to global warming. They call on these companies to take action to adapt their businesses over the long term for a low carbon economy. The Church of England. Why isn't someone of the Church of England here to congratulate that person in the name of this conference to a sector that is hardly ever seen amongst the players, the partners, the discussants about the future of this planet? ODI has presented us with a fabulous paper, a discussion paper, 0-0, Achieving Zero Extreme Poverty on the Path to Zero Net Emissions. Is that possible? Well, if we have the Church of England and if we have the presidents of China and the US coming with joint declaration, everything is possible. And that's why we are here in this COP. Because we want to generate change and we want to be part of change. And we want to respond and be able to say that we have managed to reduce the threats of climate change. I'm not going to concentrate on the technicalities and the economics because I know nothing of that. I'm a citizen who usually is amazed at the complexity of language of climate change. And 95% of the times, I don't understand what people are talking about. So I will concentrate on what I think are only 3 challenges, not the only ones, but 3 of them important. One is language. Several of you, probably the citizens of the US, know who Bill Urey is. Bill Urey is one of the authors of Negotiation Skills. And a year ago, more or less, we were having lunch together, and I was talking about CDKN and talking about climate change and the threats and about poverty and about the vulnerable communities. I said, Yolanda, why do you get so excited? Change is good. When you change jobs, school, town, home, clothes, shoes, that is good. Why do you tell me that climate change is bad? So, message number 1, should we be talking about climate crisis instead? Because climate change doesn't deliver the force that we want to, the weight that we give to those words. Then how do we expect participation to happen if people don't understand? The people who are walking by Have you ever tried to explain what climate change is to your mother or your grandmother? If they understand, it means everybody else will on the street, and we need those people participating in change, because us, the ones who have the privilege to be leading processes, only us will not be able to generate anything. Another issue related to language is security. What do we mean by security? Are we interpreting the word with the same definition? Are we all aware that security is about water security, is about food security, it's about human security? That it's something much deeper than the usual interpretation that we have given to the word security, which usually has been in some way connected to the military. But now we are talking about human survival, human security. And then, how can we talk about extreme poverty if we continue to measure poverty and wealth by the GDP criteria? If wealth and income and growth, economic growth, is only defined by how many barrels of oil, of how many tons of soy you export or import. So the language of growth, the language of development, also needs to be agreed on if we want to work in the same direction, all of us together. The second theme I wanted to bring up was, what does political will mean? And how do we manage vested interests in politics with political will? How do we agree on the development model that we want to have if we have already demonstrated that it doesn't work, that it creates more inequality, that the emissions are destroying the planet and all of our societies? And then within this umbrella of political will, we have a typical chicken and egg dilemma. What comes first? There are several leaders around the world, heads of state, that say that first we have to deal with the extractive industry. Deal means exploit resources before we address environmental and social conditions. That first we have to get rich, become rich, and then we will deal with the rest. That dilemma has to be agreed on by all societies if we want to make this change. Zero poverty, zero emissions. There is still no acceptance that the deterioration of the environment increases poverty, and that cannot longer continue. We are talking also, when we deal with political will, how do we manage, discuss, and propose ethical behavior in politics, in policies, whether they are national, international, global, or local? Because that also has to lead us into behaviors of working together in a coherent and cohesive way. Ecuador cannot work alone without Peru and Bolivia and Colombia and Brazil. The ecosystem is the same challenges, the same threats, and the political boundaries make no difference at all. How do we scale up experiences, successes, and wonderful cases that demonstrate that we can do differently? And we still need to work on that. In terms of energy and the energy patterns, when are we going to have the click that changes the models of today? There is a study of IDB, the Inter-American Development Bank, that says that in the next 20 years, Latin America and the Caribbean will require twice as much energy. And if we only would use 4% of the available renewable energy resources, we would satisfy the needs of Latin America and Caribbean. 4%, and we continue to dig oil, and we continue with fossil fuels without opening the door to proven possibilities, not possibilities, certainties for change. The third point I want to make is about us, human nature, behavior. How do we change ourselves? How and when do we discuss that giving up on certain cultures is improving society? And it's improving the human being as a species. I'll start by waste. No matter how much we improve agricultural practices, there is no way we can satisfy the needs of the planet. If the present pattern of waste continues, we can't manage with the food needs and food production needs of the planet. If we reduced 1/3 of food wasted every day, 800 million people, hungry people, would be fed every day by reducing 1/3 of present food waste. That has to do with ethics, it has to do with policy, it has to do with understanding. The culture of waste has to change today. And all is interlinked, of course. By bringing these examples, I'm just touching on some key issues that really dramatize the situation we live on today. But we have to accept that everything is connected. And of course, the use of power to define policies, to define models of growth, to define energy, the energy policy, or the financial sector policies. Those need to change as part of a cultural, social, and human behavior. We need to have a common understanding of wealth management and how important it is to differentiate value from price. 2 weeks ago, I attended the World Parks Congress in Sydney, in Australia. And again, there is a desperate plea that we, coming out of this event, that we insert the discussion of biodiversity and conservation and ecosystems values into climate change agenda. It's not strong enough. Zero poverty and zero emissions can only be achieved if the underlying ultimate goal is to live in harmony with each other, amongst countries, amongst cultures, and more, in harmony with nature. No water, no clean air, no biodiversity, no life. As simple as that. Thank you.